Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of Thursday, August 20th, 2015. The time is 5:05 p.m. May we have roll call?
Chairperson Vardanian?
Here.
Vidor?
Here.
Shire?
Here.
Morgan?
Here.
All present.
And accounted for.
Okay, thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on or before Monday, August 17th, 2015 on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. Number 3 is approval of the minutes of July 16th, 2015. Does anybody have any corrections or comments?
I have one correction. Page 2, item 7D. Under the voting section, I have voted yes and no. And I voted no on that item.
I see. I thought you were saying you voted yes and no.
I didn't vote yesterday, but it says I did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's
Did
all
you
I
have one?
Yeah, I had one on the issue of 1020 Palmer. On the speakers, I'm identified as a speaker as a commissioner, and I was not speaking as a commissioner.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Say applicant. Oh, you're not even an applicant.
I'm
you're
not.
the
I was just nobody. Yeah.
You're the applicant's representative.
Right, there you go.
Do you want that to change to applicant's representative or?
Yeah.
No.
On behalf of the city.
Okay. That's it. Michael, nothing? I think we're good. Okay, I'll need a motion to approve in a second, please.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Vartanian?
Yes.
Shire?
Yes.
Vidor?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Minutes approved with corrections.
Thank you. Item number 4 is oral communications, and having no cards, I'm going to...
I have 2.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay, so these are both on an agenda item. So we'll move to item number 5, comments from commissioners. Any comments?
I have a question for staff. Could you remind me on the historic plaques for the Mills Act contract or any other contract, are they required to put them on the facility?
Funny you should ask. It's not required in the ordinance or in the Mills Act contract. We've talked about adding it to one or the both. Right now, it's just in the instructions for the application. Eileen's worked on a set of, we're going to try to make it a more formal process to make sure that everyone who applies knows from the beginning what it entails. And we've just reviewed that. So, but we don't have an ordinance change proposed right now or a Mills Act change, but we could add that in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea. I just think the public benefits from knowing which buildings are landmarked. And then I have a second question for staff. This is regarding when the change went into effect to have photographs and also house inspections or termite inspections on Mills Act property.
Yeah, that
Getting to that.
That has to go to council for approval, and we have to get that together. So, but we have the, I think the first draft at least of the ordinance revision is ready to go, and we just have to finalize that and schedule it. But it's been put, to be honest, on the back burner for a while. So
in the past, say, year, those properties that have been added to the register do not have that language in their contract, or it does, we just need to get...
We're trying to get better photo documentation at this point, and we're telling people that that's something that's coming, but we haven't instituted it yet because it's not official.
Move that to the...
We can do our best, yeah, we'll definitely do our best.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No? I would just like to acknowledge and thank the Glendale Historical Society for another very successful fundraising gala that they put on over the weekend in a beautiful Italianate home, Villa Farinacci, in northwest Glendale. It was very well attended, and part of the fundraising goal from that event goes towards historic preservation in Glendale, and we always support that. I think I can speak on behalf of those who attended and my colleagues. So, thank you. Okay, item number 6 is old business, and having none, we'll move to item number 7, A, 1330 Romulus Drive, Glendale Register Nomination and Mills Act application. We'll ask for a staff report. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. So this is a Glendale Register Nomination and Mills Act application for the property located at 1330 Romulus Drive in Glendale. The house is located at the Adams Hill neighborhood of South Glendale. The modern-style house sits on a hillside corner lot above the street level. The post and beam structure has a T-shaped plan, you can see here in this picture, and has a cross-gable roof, and was designed in 1963 for Peterka family. It is designed by architect David Alexman, originally from Canada. He graduated from the University of Southern California with architectural degree and established his professional practice in Hollywood in 1962, and later he moved to Pasadena. And then he earned PhD degree in education, and besides of being designer, he served as an assistant professor at Los Angeles City College and taught at California State University in Los Angeles as well. Based on the staff research and supporting document in the application, architect David Alexman is not significant enough to be considered for criterion 2 for Glendale Register criteria. And criteria 2 basically makes the property eligible for designation for its association with a significant person. The house is a fine example of modern style house. And at the street facade, it's a 2-story with the living spaces at the second floor. And at the lower level, there is a carport, the main entry door with single pane side lights, and a row of sliding aluminum windows. The windows at the upper level are sliders above fixed panes with simple wood trim around them. The windows and door at the house are all sliding aluminum. The walls are clad with a small stucco, and almost the large rectangular panels of vertical wood siding are part of the walls cladding system in this house. The north facade up on the hill features a series of sliding windows and door with the vertical wood siding panel between them. You can see these panels in this slide better between this sliding door and windows. The roof system of this house is a very low-pitched cross-gable roof with deep eaves and exposed rafter tail. The roof covered by gravel finish. And one of the architectural features of this house is vertical stucco wing walls project from the walls, which can be seen at the rear of this house as well. It is probable that there was a screen wall between two of them at the bathroom to provide privacy. Here is the bathroom facing the rear patio. At the rear side, the patio, also some original paving remain. Originally, they were wood strip between the flags of plain concrete and cast pebble, which some of them are gone. And at the east and the east wall here and the south wall of the T-shaped plan clad with smooth stucco, and the only decorative feature of the south wall are vertical grooves. And there is a stair next to this wall leading to the rear patio at the south side. Here is the stairs. Almost the original form and design concept of the house are intact. However, there are a few alterations over the years in this house. The retaining wall that you can see here at the rear was added in 1968. A spa was added in 1980 and then replaced by a fire pit here. And some original paving, as I mentioned, were removed, and also a new bathroom vinyl window was added at the west wall at the rear of the house recently. So staff believes that the property appears to meet eligibility criteria 3 for listing on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources because it's a distinctive example of the modern style houses within the city, and also it features many character defining feature of the style and also construction techniques such as post and beam construction and clean horizontal and vertical lines, sliding doors and window, and the indoor and outdoor design concept. Staff recommends that the house be designated as Peterka House after his first owner. Staff recommends that the Commission consider applying some condition for the Mills Act contract if the Commission support the nomination. The condition include re-roofing the entire house, including appropriate drainage to prevent ongoing damage, repair the damaged beam at the carport, repair and refinish the wood beams, eaves, and siding, reinstall privacy screen at bathroom wall facing the rear patio. And that was my presentation for this report.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, we will open the public hearing. I don't know, do you have a preference as to who would like to go first? Hey, Tim Gregory. Please state your name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Tim Gregory, and I'm the historian that wrote up the history of the house for the owner and also helped him with the application. Although I've looked at a lot of houses in Glendale over the years, of all the houses I've researched, I think this one is most boldly contemporary. The architect, Dr. David Alexman, was both an academician and a practicing architect, and he was probably interested in both architectural history and what was considered cutting-edge design in the early 1960s. This house was completed within a year after he had set up his own practice. That was one of his first designs. He graduated from USC at the tail end of what's called the USC School of Post and Beam Architecture, and began practicing at a time when more monumental and less street-friendly residential architecture started to become popular. The front facade is certainly monumental, undoubtedly enhanced by its hilltop location. As I mentioned in the application, it uses the idea of solids and voids, where what is not there architecturally is as important as what is there, and it's accentuated by the use of colors in all these different spots in the house. The use of windows is very minimal on the front facade and doesn't let the neighborhood know what's going on inside. It's unlike the traditional front porch of the old houses where everybody in the neighborhood knew who was there. But I was surprised when I looked at the northerly side and the rear of the house, which is much more reminiscent of post and beam architecture that we're used to, with its nearly flat roof, deep overhanging eaves supported by heavy beams, and many sliding doors and windows that give an almost a window wall effect, letting the outdoors inside. The use of narrow vertical wood siding between the windows is also very reminiscent of post and beam design. All the family life is directed toward the back of the house, leaving the street-facing front as private as possible. I've found this house to be a unique blend of modern styles that definitely reflects the changing trends in architecture that were occurring at the time that Dr. Alexman started his career. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the next speaker is Andrew Allison.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Andrew Allison. I'm the owner of the house.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a few things to say. I'm an architect, and I have an interest in mid-century design because I'm a mid-century guy, actually. I feel like my house is a great house on a great site. I very much enjoy living there. It's a contributor to the eclecticism of the multi-style, multi-era Adams Hill neighborhood. It represents part of the history of California design, both the architect and the builder. Representative of this indoor-outdoor California lifestyle that Tim just kind of referenced. I feel like I'm a steward of the house. I look forward to living there, enjoying it, and maintaining it in the future. And I hope that you will support me in this. And I also have a set of scans of the original blueprints that I'd like to pass to you when you're ready to. All right. Thanks.
Very nice. Thank you. Okay, having no more speakers, we'll close the public hearing. We start with comments from commissioners.
Start.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing this house before us today. It was a real pleasure to see the house and the views that are spectacular from this location. And I think the architecture offers so much in its simplicity and streamlined design, yet so much, I think, character from the post and beam to the windows to the light to the inside coming outside, and just the views are welcomed in. So it was a real pleasure to see. So I would support this nomination. I also agree with staff's recommendations for the conditions, and I also have some concerns just making sure that the wood is repaired fully, because there was a lot of wood damage, whether it's termite or dry rot or water damage. I want to make sure that it's done well and correctly, as well as making sure that termite inspection is done or has recently been done or could be done, just to make sure that it isn't continuing from the inside. It's one thing to repair kind of the rafter tails or the eaves where the wood is definitely visibly damaged, but we don't know what's going on in the house. And so I just have a concern that we kind of look at that holistically. So I don't know what staff's recommendation would be on.
We could verify with the owner if he's done a recent termite report, what in the time frame of a year to 5 years. That could be a commission decision. And if it hasn't happened, we could make that a condition. It's a way to start moving forward toward the things that we've discussed. And in this case, it wouldn't be just thrown out there as a blanket condition, but it would be based on your observation of damage at various locations in the house. So I think we can make the connection that way.
Yeah, I'd like to have that attached to it, just to make sure we solve the root of the issue and aren't just patching and painting.
And then one thing we're trying to do with DRB, so I'll share it with the commission, when we're adding conditions beyond what the staff has recommended, we think it's probably most fair to reopen the public hearing so that the owner can come up and indicate whether this is something that's a possibility or not, based on some of the problems we've had also.
Sure. So, are you waiting? I think we'll wait till the end in case there are any
listen
others.
To everyone.
Okay, great. Oh, anything else?
Although in terms of the wood repair, I think the condition is repair and refinish the wood beams, eaves, and siding. And speaking with the owner when we went there, and I'm not sure if the commission heard the same thing, I believe that's his clear intention. So I think that's written broadly enough to encompass all of the woodwork, hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have to go with what staff has said. I just had a little concern on the aluminum windows. They seem to be kind of aged. I don't know if you can do anything to...
They don't make them anymore.
Is that what it is? I mean, they just...
Should enjoy them while we have them.
Yeah, it just seems so... That was the only thing I had. They just seemed... really aged. I guess that's the best way to put it.
To be honest, I just learned about a company that's still making certain kinds of aluminum windows, and I didn't see what their sliders look like. My guess is they're not going to be the same, but I'll double check that. But at this point, I don't think we should look at that as a future issue. And if the owner comes back to us and says, I need to replace the windows, if we could replace them with very, very much similar windows, we would do that at staff level. If we'd have to move to something different, there's a good chance we'd bring it back to the commission. So.
Okay. I had sort of the same question as well. So is there a way to restore? I mean, like, do you use, steel wool on them or something to kind of bring them back, or is it not
aluminum has a natural patina that gives it that kind of milky kind of film on it.
That we would want to retain.
The danger with aluminum is when you start seeing it being pitted, and as it gets more heavily pitted, that means we're actually losing material. But if there's just the patina on it, that's just what aluminum does.
Okay, so the patina would be something we'd probably want to retain.
Yeah, it's just part of how that system works.
Okay. That brought up one more thought. There is one window that had been replaced already, a vinyl window. So, Jerry, you saying that's the best option and solution for this house?
We wanted to leave that up to you because staff believes that we heard from the owner that it was originally a louvered window, and while louvered windows are still able to be found, it's such a security issue that no one really wants to go there. And for a small window like this, I don't think we'd ask for that. It's such a small window and such a non-noticeable facade that we thought leaving that there isn't that different from most other solutions, unless we were to find this other kind of aluminum solution, which the commission could recommend that be researched and, if possible, be done. But the difference, if you look at the standard aluminum windows that are used today, while they're a little more durable and don't look like vinyl so much, those sight lines and proportions are really similar. So that it was a trade-off that we weren't sure that we wanted to step into. But if the commission wants to explore a new aluminum window that might keep the sight lines, we could see if the owner could do that, and then we could look into the possibility. But you could also ask that it be replaced if you're not comfortable with a vinyl window on a Glendale Register property.
But you're saying the replacement would be a challenging compromise.
I was heartened to find out about this company that's been in business since 1947. I just learned about them today, strangely. And they make windows that I believe are identical to the aluminum casements in my own house. So I was like, now I know if I ever need something, where to go. But I didn't look at sliders. I didn't see what kinds of configurations and the sight lines of those. So that's definitely a possibility. I would recommend probably that a casement window go in that, because it's such a narrow window you can't put a slider in. So it would either be a casement or possibly an awning-style window, which would give us a rectangular pane of glass similar to the existing sliders on the house.
One thing I don't think we've ever really talked about is salvage. Is that unreasonable?
You don't see it. No one wants these old aluminum windows, so you don't see them. You see old wood windows. Exactly. You see old steel windows. Taking aluminum out of the frames, they use destructive tools and things to pull them out often. So where steel windows are valuable enough, even as scrap, that you would take them out. But I don't know.
And that was just sort of a general thought. I mean, it came to me in this discussion, but I had never thought of it before now. That we never really talk about salvage as a replacement option, although it's out there. Okay. You know what? There are lots of good houses that do get torn down just because. But yeah, if they're that flimsy, that might be difficult. Okay. Great. Is that it?
Well, yes, those are my only concerns, was the wood damage that Commissioner Shire had already said, and the aluminum. If there's something that, obviously I don't want to make it a condition if it can't be done, but
something could be done. So, even if the new window looks not like the existing windows, if the commission was just unhappy with the vinyl window on one of our buildings, there are aluminum windows that even if this company that I'm talking about doesn't work out, there are plenty of aluminum windows out there, and then at least we'd be able to say the materials are of the same material and durability as the the historic windows.
Well, since we would be giving it a Mills Act, it would be nice to have, we want to make it a fine example of this style.
Okay, so I'll write a condition that we'll try to find a suitable replacement in an aluminum frame style that's very close to the original, if not exact. And then if we can't find that, we'll still replace the vinyl window with an aluminum window with a clear finished aluminum exterior so that it has a visual resemblance to what's there. So.
That sounds fair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Well, thank you very much, Andy, for bringing your house forward as an Adams Hill resident. It's really heartening to see a house of this magnitude and stature, literally stature, being brought in front of the commission because it is so unique. I think it kind of reminds me, not architecturally, but just in terms of the way it's sited and positioned, it reminds me of Blockhouse a little bit because it's, there are very few of what we would call mid-century modernist style houses that have this type of configuration. And it really is, there are a few houses in Adams Hill that are sited in such a way and of such magnitude and uniqueness that they just have become like special points of interest or landmarks in Adams Hill, and this is certainly one of them. And also mention, not to embarrass you, Andy, but Andy's also a very good steward of generally mid-century modernism in Adams Hill, too, and we appreciate a lot of the work he's done to kind of capture information and identify those houses that are of interest from that period. I think the house is great, and I agree that what's in the Mills Act suggestion is appropriate. It would be interesting to hear from Andy if, I don't know if you were planning to reopen the public hearing about, the termite situation and also, what he thinks about the window. Because I think that's a good idea if it's possible and feasible. And I seem to remember a house, I don't remember the details, but there was a house that we looked at, I don't know if it went through, that had recently replaced aluminum windows. I think it was the house on Kenneth, and these were relatively new and very much integrated with the mid-century style. So I was not aware that it would be difficult.
Yeah, those windows were actually different than the ones that I'm talking about.
So I realize they're stylistically different, but that we can still get aluminum. So anyway, I'm very enthusiastic about this nomination, and of course, we'll enthusiastically vote yes for it.
Right. I think before I make my comments, I'll go ahead and reopen the public hearing so that we can hear from you about the termite report and how you feel about possibly replacing the vinyl window. Come on up.
Yeah, to let you know, in terms of the termites, when I bought the house 6.5 years ago, it was tented when I bought it, so that took place. Just in the past year, I was concerned about whether it needed to be tendered or looked at again. So I had an inspector come out. They looked around the house. They found one location on one of the beams where they thought it needed some treatment, and he did that, and I've got the information on that. But that was the only thing he found. So I concur that needs to be, you got to keep an eye on that kind of thing, and I would definitely do that over time, take care of that kind of thing. So. I just was going to mention about the salvage, by the way, you mentioned that. I am constantly at the salvage stores on San Fernando. There are two, actually, you may be aware of. The reuse store, and there's another one near the Glendale glass store down that alley. And I check to see what they have. I don't see aluminum windows very much, actually, but I do keep an eye on stuff that I might be able to use.
Right.
In terms of the aluminum window, yeah, I'd be very open to that. The only concern, I guess, is it would need to be that exact size without having to do some modification to the stucco surround or the tile inside the bathroom, basically. So finding something, either a custom size or a standard size that would fit in that opening would be the only concern.
One of the best ways to do that, well, we have a few ways with either block frame windows or retrofit windows that I think would work for you. So we'll start with looking at the metal window corp windows and then move to the next step.
Yeah.
And you'll have to help us with that process.
Sure, of course, definitely.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so I'll just say that I also agree with everything that's been said. I really couldn't have imagined from the street what beautiful views and what a wonderful sense of the indoor-outdoor experience this home has that we talked about, and that was specific to architecture of the period. The course of windows along the north side are just very beautiful, and I do appreciate the overall, just the clean lines of the house, the geometric volumes. It's just a very nice example. And I, too, thank you for bringing it forward, and from speaking with you when I toured it, I know that you will be a good steward and the right person to conserve this home. So thank you. And with that, if someone would like to make a motion.
I would like to move that the house at 1330 Romulus Drive be recommended to City Council for listing on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, as well as to move the Mills Act application forward with the additional amended issue of reviewing the possibility of replacing the one vinyl window. The rest was stated in the staff report.
A second.
Who's doing roll call today?
I'll take care of that.
Okay.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Vidor?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
And Chair Vartanian?
Yes.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is Planning Division updates and informational briefings. 8A is update on work performed at 1327 Cordova Avenue, Anderson House, Glendale Register number 47.
Okay, we have a few slides for this. Oops. Oh.
Maybe not.
Something seriously wrong here.
Not where you expected.
Doesn't contain the slides that I just added upstairs. Luckily, I had the foresight to bring a thumb drive. See about that.
I don't know about you all, but I'm getting a really different experience in the room with the window curtains open.
I know.
Yeah, well, we've been told for years that we have to keep the room dark. So if it's only back there.
No, it looks really nice.
It's almost hard to concentrate.
It won't be this way forever. In a few months,
That's right.
it'll be dark.
That's right.
Okay, here we go. Foresight, an amazing thing.
Yep.
So it was brought to our attention that some work had appeared to have been performed without permits, which turned out to be the case. This is the Anderson House at 1327 Cordova. It's not in Ross Moyne, but just north of the Ross Moyne district. The work in question was visible from the street, where there was some stucco patching along the rafter tails on the side of the garage, as well as what appeared to be missing beam ends. I went out and visited with the owner, and they told me that the roof had been repaired significantly without a permit. They replaced the rafter tails, and when I was at the site, I thought these rafter tails looked kind of not as well fabricated as what we normally expect. I found in our file the designation photos from the nomination report, and the rafter tails in these photos also appear to be rather uneven in their cuts and a little ragged looking. It gives it kind of a rustic look, which isn't the worst thing, but this was the condition at the time of designation, and the owner said that they reused these in some cases. So I'm assuming that that was what brought those some of these cuts looking that way. Their intention is, of course, well, not of course, their intention is to paint so that this area will look better. And then their intention is also to restore the beam ends, which I believe are just kind of rectangular beams when you look at the profile. And those will just be decorative beam ends, which is very typical for this style anyways. They're not necessarily structural, the ends of the structural beams. So we don't have a timeline yet for that work, but their intention is to fulfill it. And once that happens, they'll pay for the permit for the work that was done, and then the violation will be removed. So.
Okay.
This is an ongoing situation, but I met with them a few weeks ago, and we'll stay on top of it.
Right.
The
pictures.
What's that?
Good that we had the pictures.
Yeah, yeah. I went through the whole folder because this is an older designation, and sometimes we don't know what we're going to find in the folder.
Right.
The quality of the images weren't that great because it was just color Xeroxes, but it worked out. So.
And I'll just make one quick correction. The house is in the Ross Moines neighborhood, not within the Ross Moines Historic District.
Yes. Okay.
But in the overall Ross Moines neighborhood.
It gets so
In the
confusing.
historic
I only think about the district.
Bellhurst Hill Slopes.
It's in
I know.
Bellhurst Hill Slopes, right?
To anyone watching out in TV land who might be offended by that comment.
Right, on the street in
Why did
particular.
they remove the beam ends? I'm curious, what was the...
Things like that rot out all the time, and my guess is they might have just painted over it, so without having caught it, we wouldn't have gotten those back if no one had noticed, so we're okay there.
Okay, good. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 8B, which is update on Masonic Temple Rehabilitation Project.
We have a couple of recent items relating to the Masonic. Here are the facades that you know so well from our recent hearing, or many hearings over the years at this point. In the course of examining how this building was actually going to be reused, there was a recognition on the team's part that they needed to bring fresh air into the building for a proposed HVAC system, which is an interesting system where it's not any big cooler or chiller up on the roof. It's individual units that circulate chilled refrigerant through the system. So there need to be a number of different points or individual units spread throughout each floor of the building. So there need to be a number of penetrations made into the walls in addition to the windows that were approved. Page and Turnbull, the consultant who's reviewed the project so far, worked with them on this. I've met with them. Page and Turnbull worked with them extensively to come up with the best solution. This is the approved facades that you reviewed last May. And this is my drawing of this. So the sizes are, I'm eyeballing it. The drawings we had were engineering drawings that were really too difficult to see, so I kind of just did this in Photoshop. The individual louvers are going to be 16 by 16. I'll show you what they look like in a second, but this just shows you the locations on the prominent south facade. There are 14 louvers. You'll learn in a minute that there's a new building proposed for the vacant lot on the corner, which is going to obscure at least the 5 louvers at the bottom. So there'll be 9 louvers of some visibility. When we were considering the back and forth of what's appropriate and what meets the Secretary's standards, there was concern that putting anything up on the roof, which was one of the things we thought might be a logical place to do. The roof is in its original condition. It's actually a concrete deck that the roofer said was like the most perfect roof of a building this age that they had seen. Not that it couldn't be penetrated, but we thought putting mushroom vents or anything on that would be kind of a significant change. There would also be issues with OSHA where any equipment has to have safety railings and safety catwalks around it. So it started looking like any rooftop equipment at the back part of the building was going to be a problem. We were originally there were vents proposed in both of these areas toward the front of the building. There's numerous vents in these areas. We were not happy about that since we've been trying to protect those front areas a little more than the other parts of the facades. To keep them closer to their original condition. We asked them to try to vent up to the roof because this area of the building on the west side has a flat roof, and so they were able to accommodate that request. So we don't have penetrations except for this one right here, which is on the north facade, which is right at the column line that comes down on this And they have a request for information in with the construction team to try to move this one, but they know that they can put it in this location, and we were satisfied that it was close enough to our goal for that. Also, in terms of thinking about what the most appropriate location for these was, this wall has always had vent openings in it across the top with louvered vents, and it kind of always acknowledged that, yes, some ventilation is needed on these facades. So we worked with them to find a louver that is going to be the best possible solution. This is a cut sheet for the louver. This is a mock-up of the installation. This dimension isn't exactly what it's going to be. They will be about 16 by 16. And Page and Turnbull, looking at this is, if you look at this section drawing, these are storm protection vents. So this is the outside on the left, inside on the right. So when you look up into the vent, where a lot of these you are going to be looking up into it, as you see here, and there's the blackness there, they're going to finish the entire vent in the white color, the off-white that the building is going to be painted. It's still going to read as a shadow in that area, and it's going to look like a vent, but it's going to be flush mounted, which helps the flat fin, the flat surface of each fin is going to be in plane with the building wall. And we thought that this was an appropriate solution. We knew that it's not uncommon in Page and Turnbull when they've worked on hundreds of buildings, and they always say, yes, HVAC is always where things come in later, and they realize, oh, now we need to do something that's different. We concurred with Page and Turnbull's assessment that this met the Secretary of the Interior standards, and we're able to approve this at staff level, so this is an informational item for the Commission. We think we worked as hard as we could to get this to be an acceptable solution. And I think compared to everything else that's going on the building, it is a minor amount of historic fabric that's being removed. So the Page and Turnbull report clearly held that this was in keeping with the Secretary's standards. It's a pretty minor change from what was approved. If you have any questions, there's another piece of this, but for the louvers, if you have any questions, I can try to answer.
So we're going to see what's going to appear to be, the louvers are angled down.
Right.
And then you see what we'll read as black stripes when we're actually just looking into kind of the interior dark.
Yeah, it's kind
inside.
It's similar. Yeah, it's similar to the way the louvers at the top read now. Mm-hmm. But they will be flush mounted. These are recessed louvers, so they will be flush mounted, so there'll be more of the surface of the louver at the plane of the wall. We felt that was important both to kind of make it read as part of the wall and not be another kind of shadowed recess. It also differentiates it slightly from the historic louvers on the building, which are going to be reused. So these are still going to play a part, the upper louvers in the HVAC system. At the north facade, because of the adjacent buildings, I think about 5 of these louvers at the bottom won't be visible much at all from the street. And as I said, I think these 5 louvers won't be too visible, and maybe even these at the 3rd level, based on the new building going in, won't be too noticeable. So when we look at these little openings, we thought we could make the determination to do this at staff level because it meets the standards.
It's interesting you mentioned that Page and Turnbull obviously deals with this type of thing all the time, but you know, it's a standard part of reconfiguring a building, but they didn't say anything at either hearing.
We originally thought that HVAC was going to be up on these flat roofs. In the early discussions, we thought that that was going to satisfy the system. I believe that had to be changed by the team. And then the thought of moving anything onto this roof, which was something that I originally promoted because you do see mechanical equipment on roofs. But as we kind of talked about what that would really mean, how it would really look, the OSHA issues, it started looking like a much less acceptable solution.
Well, from a design perspective, I think the flush venting is the right approach, so at least it fades into the wall as much as possible. I appreciate the effort they're taking to try to paint the interior of the venting, but I mean, let's
I
be
don't-
honest.
no,
It'll
we-
be black.
No,
with air.
Well, these
issues.
these are yeah, these are intake, which they will get dirty. Hopefully, the building is going to have to be repainted every so often. At that time, we might get those cleaned and repainted. So,
I mean, if there's some concern about that, we can take some comfort or satisfaction. And if you look across the street at how the Crusoe affiliate takes care of the Americana brand, it's, the sidewalks are cleaned every morning at 6 o'clock. So I don't think they're the type of owner that lets their buildings get dirty and dingy. It's just not part of their persona. So.
No, and I wasn't implying that, but just a matter of life. We have dirty air.
It is, yes.
Vents will get dirty. We already acknowledged that when we talked about it, when we said, and we thought, well, there's nothing wrong with doing it, but it's not going to last forever. So it might not last a month. Who knows?
Nice sensitivity.
Well, thank you for that update.
Okay, and then
Is
the other.
construction on schedule, like from a project perspective?
Very much so. That's their plan. So, this is one of the rare projects where I think they're actually going to meet their deadline. They have a lot of reasons to do that. So.
And do we see a phase 3?
You will see a phase 3. The phase 3 was when they have a tenant identified for the ground floor use, and that will be primarily signage. At this point, we don't know. We've already approved the storefront, and we hope that they will respect that approval. But that's one of the things that I would say, could come back. But we haven't seen anything. They are talking to tenants. People are interested in the building. So that's one of the good parts of this whole thing. I truly think that this building is going to come back after decades and decades of just sitting there. And regardless of some of these issues that we've had and some of the controversy or concerns in the community, I think it's really going to be a good thing for Brand Boulevard, a good thing for the landmark. So that's nice.
Is there an opportunity to tour the site at some point?
They haven't offered that. I can certainly ask. It's a very active construction site, so I'm not sure that that's going to be a possibility, especially since the commission doesn't have purview over the interior. But Alan might have something.
I will be happy to ask. No, I was going to say it's a very active construction site, and I imagine in order for them to meet their schedule, they probably have crews there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and probably even later.
Yeah, and we can definitely ask. So.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yes.
Never heard.
The other piece of news, which is on the adjacent parcel where we have the vacant lot, and I believe in May you saw kind of an outline of a proposed building. The building that is currently under review by the city this is the older drawing that was shown to you in the presentation. The proposed building is similar to, very, very similar to this, with a kind of a raised portion at the corner to kind of anchor the corner. The main difference of the proposal we're looking at is this skylight closest to the building has been removed. This bay is a little bit taller, and then these piers here are lower, so there's more of a horizontal line between the two raised kind of pavilions of the building. It's actually a very handsome design, and we've made some recommendations, especially for the treatment of the side and the rear elevation. We had a few comments on the front, which I think will enhance it, but it came from a good starting point. It's very similar to the kind of commercial brick buildings, the historic buildings to the north of the Masonic. And working in terms of scale and bookending, we think it's very appropriate to the building, which, as we know, we've speculated in the past that there's probably an expectation that we'd have these kinds of buildings marching up and down the street, and since that never happened, having these lower buildings really does work for the brand that we know today. So we can keep you posted on that, but this is close to what we expect to see there.
Right.
Now, when a designated building has something built adjacent to it, there has been in the past a review, like with the YMCA and things like that, where the commission is looking not from an approval standpoint, but more from a kind of recommendation standpoint to make sure that nothing impactful is happening. Mm-hmm. So what is the difference between having it done at staff level and having it come to the commission just for a consultation?
Yeah, there's no requirement in the ordinance for a consultation for something that's adjacent to a historic building. Most cities don't bring things to the commission, their commissions for adjacencies. I know in New York, where you have issues with, especially with pile driving to get down to bedrock, there are issues with structural stability of landmarks. That's usually worked out through the building department in the city. It doesn't go to the Landmarks Commission because they don't have expertise in that kind of engineering. So we have the ability to bring things to the commission at various points. There are 2 projects next to the Alex Theater. One is a remodel of the old Don Cuco's that you may have seen undergoing construction right now. And we believe when we get those projects to a point where they meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, well, they don't meet the standards, but they don't affect the eligibility of the designation. So with Don Cuco, for example, we made a lot of effort to keep, they're building a metal framework over an open patio deck on the roof, basically. And we didn't want that to be visible from the forecourt of the Alex. And we were out there, we were measuring, we were standing on the roof, we had mock-ups and everything, and we did a great job doing that. Then the fire department came back and said, oh, we need a full elevator in this building. And it has to have a gurney, and it has to be big enough to lift that gurney, and then you need a certain head height. So at that point, it was unavoidable. We knew that elevator, the top of it was going to be visible from the forecourt. So we just made sure that it was going to be finished as simply as possible and have no embellishment and just kind of read as what it is. And so far, the people at the Alex have not been too concerned about it. So, but there's no requirement. And in this day of streamlining with the project, we're trying to move projects with limited staff through the process as well and quickly as we can. We're kind of judicious when we decide that something needs commission review, that it will either enhance the project or help with the public perception of the project. And in this case, we didn't think that this, given what's approved on the building and the changes that are coming to it, this is rather minor. This is a low-rise building, very similar to the adjacent buildings. So we thought we were well. This is not on the same fast-track process, though. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's not all going to be done in December.
If I may elaborate on that, as Jay said, the Commission has no authority by ordinance to review or weigh in or judge projects that are adjacent to historic structures. So in the case of the YMCA project, your review is really at an informational and advisory to the final approving body, which in that case was the City Council and the Housing Authority. But there are certain properties, some of you may recall that when we did the CNG refueling facility that sits on Gardena in front of, somewhat sort of in front of the train station at the south end of the city, that came in front of the Commission for discussion. Again, an advisory review. So, there are certain properties and landmarks that are so prominent in the city that development that happens adjacent to them is sometimes perceived differently. So, the Alex Theater, the train station, and Masonic Temple are clearly properties that people have their eye on, and we're talking about development that is directly adjacent to and touches the historic building in many cases. I don't think you should expect that we would bring forward to you a proposed renovation that might happen next door to the house we just nominated on Romulus, of course.
You completely misunderstood me.
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting that any of this is required. I had only remembered the experience of doing it and wondered what the rationale was behind coming for an advisory versus having it be at the staff level.
Right, and in your case,
and he explained it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So as I said, it's basically at a staff level, we sort of make the judgment call that this is a property of significant importance to the community, and the Commission should be aware that something is happening. And if you have input that is useful for the staff approval or DRB or council approval, it probably should be heard. But we typically reserve it for these kind of more prominent landmarks, structures.
Do we know what the projected uses are for this new building? Is it just retail?
It's going to be commercial retail. There's going to be a restaurant at the corner. We don't know the other 3 tenants. It's going to be 4 commercial spaces.
4 commercial spaces.
Am I right?
And what about parking?
Oh, it might be 5. It looks like 5. Parking is a fascinating issue at this building. Alan will handle that issue.
As you may recall, the city sort of reconstructed the parking lot and alley behind there. So we're working with the Caruso team to determine how much of that parking they might be able to utilize. If I recall, the footprint of this building also doesn't go all the way to the back property line, so there is some parking on grade that they can accommodate.
There's going to be about 12 or 15 spaces at the rear, which it's very, very common when a site can't accommodate the parking that's required for the owner to make arrangements for off-site parking. What we believe will happen here is similar to what's happening at the Masonic, where the Caruso, the Americana parking garage, will take some of that overflow. And then there are also some of the city garages nearby that may have excess space that can be used by businesses.
Would they have to apply for a variance if the parking, code-required parking they can't get to that capacity?
It's not a variance, it's a parking exception.
Oh, exception.
But there is a process. And that's how we make sure that there is a signed agreement for off-site parking. We can make sure that there's valet service between certain hours. The Seeley's building went through this. If you remember, the Seeley's building has 41 units and has 41 parking spaces. And if you've ever driven by, you see there's a little umbrella up and there's a valet in there. And I have no idea where they're taking the cars, but they've made an arrangement, and something's working. They might take take a spin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that update. Then I think the last one is 8C, update on status of Grand Central Air Terminal rehabilitation.
And I don't know that we need an update because the commission will be touring the site this coming Tuesday. I was there a few weeks ago, and I think I mentioned this maybe. It couldn't be the last meeting, but it's amazing what they've done. I've seen it several times during the process, and it's really great. So all I can say, your update is go make sure you make it on the tour. So.
Thank you.
Thank you
for arranging that.
Yeah. Forward to it.
You should also know you'll be joined by many of our staff members. I didn't expect many people to be interested, and we just offered it up the other day, and a lot of them were interested. Yes. So you'll have a group with you. So be a chance to bond.
Very good. Okay. So with that, we'll adjourn.
At what time?
Oh, at
6:04.
6:05. 6:04.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.